Welcome to the Partis channel. Today we explain Leviticus chapter 17 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We are so glad you're here. Let's dive right in and begin our methodical journey through the text. We're going to look strictly at the simple, direct meaning of the words today. That means we're completely focused on the actual events and the specific laws exactly as they are laid out in the original Hebrew text. Our ultimate goal today is absolute clarity. We aren't skipping a single verse, and we definitely aren't going to be jumping around to other books to make our points. We're going to meticulously unpack the who, the what, the where, and the why of Leviticus 17, taking the proper time to truly understand each part before we move forward. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with brief context, move into centralizing worship, the rules for the stranger, the sanctity of blood, purity rules, and finally, practical life lessons and a recap. Section 1, Brief Context. Okay, to make sure we grasp every single verse perfectly, we first have to establish exactly where the Israelites are standing in the physical world. Right now, they are traveling through the wilderness, living in this massive, highly organized camp. And right in the very middle of this sprawling camp is the tent of meeting. You have to understand, this tent is the absolute heartbeat of their entire community. It's the portable sanctuary where God's presence literally dwells among them. And crucially, it is the only official location where sacrifices are meant to be brought and processed by the priests. Keep this specific location in the back of your mind, because it is the entire focal point of our first major set of rules. Section 2, Centralizing Worship. Verses 1 through 7 are a massive turning point because they completely redefine how the Israelites are allowed to interact with sacrifices. God speaks directly to Moses and commands him to deliver a very strict, no-nonsense message to Aaron, his sons, and the entire population of Israel. Let's break down the exact wording of verses 1 through 4. The text says that if any Israelite slaughters an ox, a lamb, or a goat, and it doesn't matter if they do it inside the camp or out in the fields, if they fail to bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to the Lord, the consequences are incredibly severe. The text literally says they are guilty of bloodshed. He has shed blood. And because of this severe violation, that person will be entirely cut off from his people. Total separation from the community. This brilliantly illustrates the huge paradigm shift occurring in verses 5 and 6. God is putting a definitive end to random, chaotic sacrifices happening out in the open fields. He's forcing everything into a centralized, orderly, transparent system. The text explicitly points out that the Israelites had developed this habit of making sacrifices out in the fields on their own. But now, that old way is over. They absolutely must bring those sacrifices directly to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting. They are to be offered as fellowship offerings or peace offerings. The priest's specific job is to sprinkle the blood against the altar of the Lord and burn the fat to create a pleasing aroma. Everything is brought out into the open under the strict supervision of the official priesthood. So the absolutely crucial point we hit in verse 7 is the why. Why did God feel the need to implement this incredibly strict centralized rule? Well, the text gives us a surprisingly specific and, honestly, a pretty shocking reason. They have to stop offering their sacrifices to goat idols. Yes, depending on the translation, these are literally called satyrs or field demons. The Israelites clearly had a very real, very wild problem going on. God is strictly eliminating their opportunity to sneak off into the wilderness for these pagan demonic rituals. By centralizing all worship at the tent of meeting, there's no more hiding in the bushes. And the text clearly states this is to be a lasting ordinance for them for all generations to come. Section 3, the stranger. Now, looking at verses 8 and 9, you might logically wonder, do these strict rules only apply to native-born Israelites? The text is crystal clear on this. Absolutely not. Any non-Israelite resident, the stranger or alien living among them, is bound by the exact same rule. Verse 8 says, any Israelite or any alien living among them who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting, that man must be cut off from his people. There are 0 exceptions based on your background or where you were born. If you choose to live within the camp, you follow the unified, centralized law of the camp, period. Section 4, Sanctity of Blood. Next, we examine verses 10 through 14, which introduce what is easily the most severe and profound prohibition in the entire chapter. In verse 10, God states he will set his face against anyone, native or stranger, who eats blood. The text says any Israelite or any alien living among them who eats any blood. I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and will cut him off from his people.
Just pause and notice the intensity of the language here. God doesn't just casually say they'll be punished. He says he will personally set his face against that soul. It is an absolute, uncompromising prohibition. No one eats blood. And the text doesn't just leave us guessing. It immediately gives us the deep theological reason behind this severe law. Verse 11 says, "For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar." This is a huge statement. The text explicitly defines the physical blood of the creature as its literal life force. That explains exactly why it cannot be consumed as ordinary food like a piece of meat. Blood is not just a biological fluid in this text. It represents the very essence of life itself. Because blood is the life, God has exclusively designated it for the altar to achieve atonement. It's effectively trading the animal's life for the human's life. Atonement is the vital process of how the Israelites restored their standing and purified the relationship with God. The blood makes atonement for one's life. It is a profound, incredibly weighty exchange. Therefore, verse 12 firmly concludes that no Israelite and no alien living among them is ever permitted to eat blood. It is reserved entirely for this sacred, holy purpose on the altar.
But you might be asking, what if an Israelite is just hunting for wild game? What if they catch something that isn't meant for the altar? Verses 13 and 14 answer this perfectly. When an Israelite or an alien hunts for wild food, say a permitted beast or bird that won't go to the tent of meeting, they still have to respectfully drain the life force. They are commanded to pour out the blood onto the earth and cover it with dust. By doing this, they are literally returning the life force to the ground, acknowledging that life ultimately belongs to God. Verse 14 repeats the main point for emphasis. The life of every creature is its blood, and whoever eats it will be cut off. It's about showing deep reverence for the creature's life, even outside the sanctuary. Section 5. Purity Rules. Okay, let's dive into verses 15 and 16. These verses outline what happens when things just don't go according to the normal sacrifice or hunting plans we just discussed. If someone eats an animal they merely found already dead, well, they haven't properly drained the blood or respected the process, have they? This triggers a state of ritual uncleanness. The text specifically mentions an animal that dies of itself naturally or one that is torn apart by wild beasts. In these messy scenarios, the blood is still trapped in the meat. The person consuming it has violated the sanctity of the blood, whether they meant to or not, and they become ceremonially unclean. So, how do they fix this? The text explicitly mandates a strict 3-step cleaning process for both the native and the stranger. First, they must wash their clothes. Second, they must bathe themselves in water. And third, they must remain unclean until the evening. Once the sun goes down, they are officially considered clean again. But the chapter ends with a very serious warning in verse 16. If they ignore this washing and bathing process, they will be held responsible and they will bear their iniquity. They can't just brush it off as an accident. The ritual purity of the camp has to be maintained. Section 6. Lessons and Recap. Now that we have methodically walked through every single verse, let's crystallize the big, simple ideas we've uncovered today. These 3 pillars really form the structural theology of the chapter, shifting the Israelites from chaotic, disjointed practices into a highly orderly, unified society. First, centralized worship at the tent of meeting stops idolatry and creates absolute community unity. Second, blood is undeniably sacred because it represents the life force, given by God for atonement. And third, there's no double standard. God's laws apply equally to the native-born Israelite and the stranger living among them. From these ancient texts, we can draw some very real, practical life lessons for ourselves today. This is why reading this still matters. We learn that the way we treat the life force of even a hunted animal reflects our inner discipline, reminding us to be deeply mindful and respectful in our daily routines. We learn the vital importance of following instructions carefully, recognizing that small details truly matter. And we learn to value community order and unity over our own individual convenience. The Israelites couldn't just sacrifice wherever it was easy for them. They had to participate in the shared community system. We too must think about how our personal actions affect the broader community around us. This timeline flawlessly recaps our journey through the text, proving how one law logically leads right into the next to build a holy camp. We started by bringing everything to the center to completely eliminate idol worship. Then we made sure everyone, including the stranger, was operating under the same rules. Next, we learned the core principle of why sacrifices work, the undeniable sanctity of the blood. And finally, we learned exactly how to clean up and maintain purity when the ideal rules couldn't be perfectly followed. I want to leave you with a thought to really chew on. Think about this question. How does recognizing the deep sanctity of life change the way we approach our daily actions? Leviticus 17 is ultimately asking us to pause, take a breath, and truly respect the profound weight of life in all that we do. When we genuinely understand that life is a sacred gift, it completely transforms how we treat the world around us, how we consume, and how we interact with our community. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.